Welcome to our sharing on the book of Exodus. I want to continue in chapter 20 and this time look at the 10 words that constitute the will of God. We all know them, but I'm just going to give an overall view of them. It's not possible to go into them in great depth. That has to be done in a different kind of program to this one. The first 4 words of God pertain to our first love, which is God Himself, and the second 6 words pertain to our second love, which is our neighbour. And in each statement, God is making a statement about Himself. And in the very first one, He says, I am the Lord your God. We sometimes just look at what we're forbidden to do or what we're told to do, and we forget what's actually being revealed. So what God is saying is He is the only God. He alone is God. He is the Supreme One. He is the great majesty. And He has proved this in the plagues of Egypt. And He has proved it in the crossing of the Red Sea. He has proved it in the miracles of the manna and the water that have led up to now. So this is not a statement of theory that's coming from Him. So He is the creator and Lord of the universe. He is the Supreme One. He is their covenant maker. He is their king. He is their redeemer. He is their everything. I am the all, and we are the little nothings entering into that incredible relationship with the all. And so in the very first commandment, He says, He will brook no rivals. Now, if you're the only God, and Satan has produced manifestations of himself to give you the impression that they're gods, you can understand that God is not going to tolerate this. You shall have no other gods before me. When we read in verses 2 and 3 that there is to be no other gods before Him, you can read that from 2 angles, and they actually help. One of them is that it is an assertion of monotheism, which it is, of course. But the second one is, and it's the one we don't look at, we only look at the prohibition, we don't look at the other side of it, which is that God is saying that He is willing to have personal intimacy with us, and you don't need anything in between. And you see this, for example, in the relationship that Moses has with God. It's a direct, personal relationship. He speaks to God, and God speaks to him. And when God was correcting Aaron and Miriam in Numbers chapter 12, verse 8, He said about Moses, I speak with him face to face plainly, not in dark sayings, and he sees the form of the Lord. In other words, the very first commandment tells us that God wants personal intimacy with each one of us as individuals and with all of us as His people. And therefore, because He wants this personal intimacy, we don't need any secondary or tertiary beings. Now you're probably going to say, but what about the saints and our Blessed Mother? And they're all part of the family, but they do not take away from the fact that God wants us to have a personal relationship with Him. The other side of this is that God is saying there is no other authority in heaven and on earth. He is authority. He is therefore the one to declare what is to happen and what is not to happen. And since He is the only authority and the only power and the only God, there is to be nothing else involved in worship. He alone is the object of our worship. And we say it in the Gloria, you alone are the Holy One, you alone are the Lord. You alone are the Most High, Jesus Christ, because He's the Son of God. Now, unfortunately, in the world that they lived in, and in the world that we live in today, there were many other gods, false gods. Now, a god is something you give your attention to and you worship. For example, today they may not have statues to false gods, but people worship money, sex, power, fame, self, materialism, possessions, all kinds of stuff, even their own egos. And so the first commandment tells us we must make a choice. Everything in the Ten Commandments is choice. You must choose either God or Satan. That's number one. And Satan reveals himself in all of these false manifestations. God or the world. That is an absolutely inferior way of living. Or the other way to put it is a choice between good and evil. A choice between God and self is ultimately the choice. And you can look up 1 John 2 verses 15 to 17 for that. So the second word is that he says we must make no carved image. You shall not make for yourself a graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above or on the earth beneath, nor anything that is in the water under the earth. And you will not bow down to them or serve them, for I am the Lord your God, and I am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and the fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. Now watch this one. Sometimes this second one is locked in with the first one in some expositions. We're doing it separately. What do you mean by anything carved on the earth or in the air or in the water? You just have to remember the plagues of Egypt. When they had gods for the air, they had gods for the earth, they had gods for the water, they had gods for absolutely everything, and they had carved images for everything. And God showed in the plagues of Egypt that all of that was fake. So he's saying you have got to go from fake to reality, from falsehood to truth. And you have got to realize that God is spirit, and you cannot make a carved image of spirit. You cannot. Now, some Christians who are not in the Catholic fold will say that Catholics are worshipping statues because there are statues of our Blessed Mother and Jesus and the saints and so on. These are human beings that have tried to do the will of God to the best of their ability, if you're talking about the saints, and who did it perfectly if you're talking about Jesus and Mary. But we don't worship the statue. They're simply reminders to us that we too have to come and live the fullness of the will of God on earth. But in the ancient world, they were actually worshipping the actual statue. They thought there was life in the statue. And that is brought out very clearly in the book of Daniel, when Daniel has to expose the ventriloquism that was being used to try and deceive both the king and the people themselves. And that's just to give you one example. So God is spirit. And so we have to remember what Jesus said to the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4, that those who worship God worship him in spirit and in truth. That our relationship with God is spirituality. It is us at the highest level of our being worshipping God, the true God, and worshipping him in our innermost being, giving him our real selves. It's actually very, very important. So in 1 Corinthians 10, verses 19 to 20, St. Paul is trying to explain to early Christians who have come in out of paganism and idolatrous worship, to try and tell them that demons get involved in idolatry. So that if you're using some kind of fake thing to try and prove that this statue is real, then the demons will actually manifest. But this commandment is telling us something very special, and that is that God is saying, I am not only the Lord your God, that's the first commandment, but I am jealous of your love, and I do not want your love to be taken by anything else, because you are mine. I made you and I redeemed you, and I want your whole heart, your whole soul, your whole mind, and your whole being. Now, they're entering into a marriage covenant with God, and in any marriage covenant, the spouses want the whole of the love of the other person. They don't want that other person sharing their special love with somebody else. In other words, they don't want a marriage of more than two. That just destroys the relationship completely. And so in this second commandment, the Lord is saying, I want you to love me fully, and I love you fully. It's all about love. So when we come to the third commandment, then we're dealing with the sacred number, number 3, which represents the most blessed Trinity. And the third one is about the name. Hashem is the name of God. And to this very day, many of the Jewish people speak about God simply as Hashem, and it means the person of God. So let's look at this. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. The name represents the person of God. Irreverence to God's name is considered as blasphemy. And so besides perjury in Matthew 5:32 and false witness in Deuteronomy 5:20, blasphemy includes every irreverent use of the divine name. Now, unfortunately, in the world we're living in, this sin is not only committed, it's even accepted. For example, if a person says, I swear to God, that's an extremely dangerous expression, using God's name. And people will use the name of Jesus, the holy and precious name of Jesus that brings him present. If you call upon the name of the Lord, he actually becomes present to you. So if we use that disrespectfully or as an expletive, then we have used the Lord's name in vain. Even if we use the oh my God as an expletive, we're also misusing the name. We have to be very careful. So let me give you some warnings that were given in the New Testament, because you might say, this is Old Testament. In Mark chapter 7, verses 6 to 9, Jesus said of the people who he was living with at the time, they worship me in vain. They honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In other words, they're actually saying the right commandments, but they're not with me. They have not made any commitment. They haven't given themselves to me. It's frightening. In Luke chapter 6, verse 46, Jesus said, why do you call me Lord, and you don't actually do what I say? There's no point in calling me Lord if you don't actually fulfill my commandments, because I've given you already from the New Testament that if you love me, you will keep my commandments. So if we're using these words and actually rebelling against the will of God at the same time, then we're in trouble. Matthew 7, verse 23, not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will get into the kingdom of God. We have to be very careful, and we have to be extremely careful about the sacredness, the holiness, the treasure, the beauty, the grace of God's holy name, even to use the word God. When you go to the book of Leviticus, chapter 24 and verse 16, they took using the name of God wrongly very, very seriously. It says, the one who blasphemes the name of the Lord must die. Now, our understanding of that would be that it is a grievous sin. Now, for those who call upon the name of the Lord correctly, you're calling upon the Lord to be present to you, to help you, to assist you, and so on. Proverbs 18:10 says, the name of the Lord is a strong tower, and the righteous run to it and are safe. In other words, that we understand the power and the grace of the name of the Lord. When you go to Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 to 11, we are told that after becoming incarnate, Jesus lowered himself lower than anybody else, even accepting death and death on a cross. God raised him high and gave him the name that is above all names, Hashem. Jesus was given God's name. And God's name was revealed as Yahweh, usually translated as Adonai or Lord. So when you read at the beginning of the Ten Commandments, I am the Lord your God, that is the Father and it is the Son and it is the Holy Spirit. Jesus is the Lord our God. He's the second person of the Most Holy Trinity. And he is most certainly our strong tower. He is the one we run to for absolutely everything. He is everything for us. And make absolutely certain you do not misuse his name. You cannot get into heaven without him. And we need to realize that the name of Jesus is sacred, is holy. So we come to the fourth word, which is about the Sabbath. And so God is saying about the fourth word, remember, I have one special day. It's a day in which you and I spend together to build up our relationship. It's the Shabbat. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. And in it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your maidservant or your manservant or your cattle or the sojourner who is within your gates. For 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath and hallowed it. In other words, God chose one special day in which his whole people would have the privilege of building up their relationship with him. Look at the world around us today. They have destroyed it. People are working on the Sabbath day, whether it is a Saturday for the Jews or whether it is a Sunday for Christians. They have absolutely pushed the holy day aside. So the Lord is telling us, he's telling us a whole lot of things. The first one is that he wants to have a special day. Now, if you are married and you have this very special relationship with someone, don't you want a special day in which the two of you are just together? That you can just be alone together to build up this relationship? Is that absolutely essential? Isn't the instinct inside of us to do that? But we don't seem to have the same instinct with regard to God. We're specifically told that after the labour of creation, that God rested on the Sabbath day and that we should also rest in imitation of him. But you're also told when you go to John chapter 19, verse 31, that Jesus rested in the tomb on the Sabbath day, which was also the Passover and therefore an extraordinarily holy day, that he rested on this solemn Sabbath after the labour of redemption, just as the new era was about to burst upon the whole of humanity with grace and glory. Jesus said in Mark chapter 2, verses 27 and 28, that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. What is he talking about? They had turned the Sabbath into so many rules and regulations that it was nearly impossible to fulfill for ordinary people who were having children and rearing children and needing to actually survive on their farms, and they were a great distance from a synagogue or from the temple. It was nearly impossible for them. And so Jesus said that the Sabbath was made for man, that is, for us to rest in God on the Sabbath day. For them, the Sabbath was the Saturday, the sixth day. Once Jesus rose from the dead, the church changed that to Sunday because he rose on a Sunday. So it's the Dies Dominica. It's the Lord's Day. But we don't even give him his own day anymore. It's really, really sad. And it was meant to be a day in which we would praise and worship God, both for creation and for redemption, and that we would come close to him, that we would pray, that we would also do something that nowadays is absolutely essential. And that is that if you rest body, mind and spirit one day in every 7, it will actually be very difficult to become ill. The whole body actually needs to rest. We need to stop. And what's wrong with the way people are living today is that they don't give their minds any time off because they're on the computers all the time. They don't give their bodies time off. They're working on the Sunday. And so they wonder why illness is everywhere. We don't give ourselves the chance. Now, if you read the gospel, you will find that Jesus would take the apostles out on mission, bring them back. They must have a time of rest. And then he would take them out on mission, come back and have a time of rest. So it's this work, rest, work, rest, work, rest is what we're meant to have. So we can be actually quite cruel to ourselves. So let's come to the fifth word, which when I was growing up was the fourth one. What God is saying is, you must honor those who gave you life, because I am life itself, and all life came from me. So, and this particular commandment is the only one which has a blessing attached to it. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land which the Lord your God has given to you. In other words, he attached a blessing of long life to honoring our parents. Now, when I was growing up, I was told that this commandment was about obeying your parents. There's a massive difference between honoring your parents and obeying them. It's a completely different thing altogether. So first of all, God is saying that he is righteous and he wants a righteous people. He wants them behaving correctly, and he wants a healthy family. He wants a healthy society. He wants a healthy church, and he wants a healthy future for us. Look around society today and the massive amount of illness there is, telling you how much is gone wrong from God's plan. Now, if we are asked to honor our parents, what exactly is it? What it implies is that you would live a life that would honor your parents in their old age, that they would be delighted that you were their son or their daughter, that you would not send them to their grave in grief from the life that you have lived. And so that you would add to the value of their lives by the type of life that you live. And the way you live would be an acceptance of the life that you have received from them, an acceptance of the education and the help and everything you would receive from them, and you would add to it by all your responses. And so each generation grows on the shoulders of the last one. And so they would face their old age and death in peace, because they would see the fruits of their labors. And Jesus said, by their fruits you will know them. So honoring the father and the mother was absolutely essential. Honoring the ones who gave you life. So what this means is that reverence, respect, and honor were to characterize the relationships in the family, the relationships between the spouses, and the relationships between the spouses and the children. And this was illustrated very well in Luke chapter 2, verses 41 to 52, where you see Jesus as a boy and his respect and honor for Mary and Joseph. You also see it in John chapter 19, verses 26 and 27, when Jesus is dying as an only son and his mother is a widow. He makes sure that she is taken care of after his death. He doesn't leave her unhelped. And so he is honoring her right up to the very end. There's a lot of instruction given in the New Testament in Ephesians 5, from verse 21 to 33, advice to parents, and also in Ephesians 6, verses 1 to 6, how to relate to their children so that this honor and respect would actually be there. It's a very important one. So let's come to the 6th commandment, which in my book used to be the 5th one. It simply says, do not kill. You're expecting a whole lot more. Now, you may be sure that in the teaching that Moses gave them, there would have been an awful lot more, and that extra stuff is all found in Deuteronomy and Leviticus and Numbers and these other books. What God is really saying is, I am life. I am the origin of all life. I am the only one who sent you to the earth. I am the only one who can take you back from the earth. You do not have any of these prerogatives. You must not kill. Now, killing can be done physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. It's the spiritual side of it that Jesus picks up when you go into the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5. And so God is saying that He is the author of life. He permits us to give life, but He does not permit us to take it. He is the author of life, and it is a very serious matter in His mind if we actually take life. It is so serious, in fact, that in Genesis chapter 9, verses 5 and 6, He Himself permitted the death penalty for murder. It's incredible. You do not touch the apple of my eye. The apple of my eye means that God's love for every individual, regardless of who they are, or their background, or their experience, or their goodness, or their badness, or anything else, His love for every individual is infinite, absolute, eternal, and unconditional. And His plans for that individual are known to Him, and He does not want any interference from anybody else. When Jesus explains the deeper meaning of this commandment in Matthew chapter 5, He actually says that uncontrolled anger, in other words, you won't take yourself on, is the source of murder. You'll either kill with your words, your thoughts, your reactions, or physically. And He said it's worthy of hell. Now, worthy of hell means non-life. God is life. God is the author of life. God wants everyone to live. So the abomination that we call abortion is something that actually will bring a huge chastisement to the earth, because we have not allowed God's children to live. By we, I mean the human race. And so St. Paul says in Ephesians 4:26, in your anger do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. Do not give the devil a foothold. Now, in the New Testament, you see, they try to take these 10 words and they try to translate it into everyday language so that we will actually live according to the will of God. And so St. Paul says that since Jesus told us in the Sermon on the Mount that uncontrolled anger is the source of murder, that it's the anger, it's the emotion of anger we must take on. We must deal with ourselves. And if we deal with the sinfulness that's in ourselves, we will never destroy anybody else, ever. In the first letter of St. John, chapter 3, verse 15, St. John tells us, anyone who hates his brother is a murderer, that is in your heart. And you know that a murderer does not have eternal life. Murder is the exact opposite of life. Murder represents hell, life represents God. And so we are looking at this terrifying phenomenon happening all around us today in the world, and that is that there is murder going on all around us. God is life, we're being told in this commandment, and life is sacred. And every human being is sacred to Him. So we come to the 7th commandment. And in the 7th commandment, God is saying to us, I am love. I allow you to love. I want you to love. I want you to grow in love. I want you to reach perfection in love, but I do not permit you to destroy it. So let's read the 7th one. It simply says, you shall not commit adultery. It's actually that simple. But again, as I say, Moses would have explained this in absolute detail to the people. So love creates marriage and family. Lust destroys it. It's as simple as that. One belongs to the kingdom of God. Love belongs to the kingdom of God. Lust belongs to the kingdom of Satan. Again, it's light and darkness, good and evil. God permits us to love and to give life through love. He actually wants it. He wants every child to be conceived in love and to be nurtured in love and to grow in love and to reach the fullness of love and to be able themselves then to nurture more life in love. He wants that, and He has blessed it, but He does not want us to destroy it. He is the creator of marriage. We were told that in Genesis chapter 2. He is the one who decided that this was the way to create new life. Lust is the destroyer. And so we're told in Genesis 2:24 that marriage is God's will for the future of humanity. It's His idea. It is good. It is blessed. It is a wonderful experience for the human race. Now, something I can't go into, literally isn't time, and that is Jesus gives teaching on both marriage and divorce in Matthew 5, verses 27 to 32, and Matthew 19, verses 1 to 12. And He gives us God's will straight down the line. This is the way it was from the beginning. And He makes us realize that both partners in a marriage are responsible for keeping that love alive and for keeping God's will in that love alive. Both. And so if something goes wrong, both of them are responsible. That's very, very clear. So the conclusion you would come to is God is love. Love is holy. Marriage and family is holy. And the final thing I want to say is, in a marriage, two become three. Whether there's more children or not, two become three. And therefore, the triune God is actually represented in that union. And Jesus Himself is hidden in the tabernacle of the family. So it's a very, very sacred thing. And God does not want anything to destroy that, because the health, the physical, emotional, spiritual health of the human race is at stake. So the 8th word, again, is very straight: do not steal. And you say to yourself, where's this coming from? What are we being told here? And God is saying that I am just, and I want justice on the earth. I am holy, and I want you to be holy. So to reach out and take anything physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual from somebody else and take it to yourself is you declaring yourself to be some kind of important person and you diminishing the other person. Therefore, it's a sin against love. And love is the great issue. It's a sin against love. And you have absolutely no right to it. Now, when you go into the civil laws, which I won't do in detail with you, you will find that the details of what a person who steals must actually give back fourfold. And when you have that story in the Gospel of Jesus meeting Zacchaeus, and Zacchaeus, knowing that he has been very unjust in his dealings with people, he told the Lord he would pay back fourfold, which was correct. It was what they were told to do in the civil law. In other words, that it was considered such a serious thing to defile another person like this, that there was to be fourfold restitution. Now, fourfold restitution would stop people from stealing. If you steal one diamond and you have to give back four, where are you going to get the other three? In other words, it was going to be very, very costly to balance the books. Very, very costly. When you look at this commandment, you're looking at the demands for honesty and integrity that had to be there for absolutely everybody. St. Paul tells us in Romans 13, verses 8 to 10, that love fulfills the whole law. The selfishness involved in stealing, the lust that is involved in destroying marriage, and the hate that is involved in destroying life are all sins against love, all destroying love and all destroying life itself. So in 2 Corinthians 8:21, Paul says, we're taking pains to do what is right, not only in the eyes of the Lord, but in the eyes of human beings as well. So we try to express this justice, we try to express this honesty and this truth. And it's put very well in Leviticus 19:2, and that is, you shall be holy, for I am holy. Now, stealing is absolute selfishness, absolute destruction of a neighbour's property, or a violation of their independence and their privacy and everything else. That is all against love. And because they're sins against love, they're against God's will, and they destroy relationships, and they destroy a society, and they create fear. And God did not want his people living in fear. He wanted them living in trust to him and to each other. I'll continue this in the next episode. Thank you for listening. Slán agus beannacht dé live. Goodbye. God bless you.
Ten years of sharing the peace of Christ. Shalom World, God's own channel.